Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Lampi Loves Meta, and we are just into national season. We've had the first 3 European National Championships already happening over the course of the last couple of days, and there is some interesting data to already look at, let me tell you that, and also a couple of really interesting deck lists we are going to look over here in today's video. If you enjoy this type of content, definitely make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like to this video, and maybe consider dropping a comment in which you tell me what you think about the current meta game, what you think is going to take the next couple of nationals coming up. So that's definitely something worth talking about. But first of all, let's talk about the spreadsheet, because I did put together a really cool and neat spreadsheet where I am collecting all the data of all the European National Championships. So all deck breakdowns and everything is going to be in here. I'm going to drop you the link to that spreadsheet in the video description down below, and there will be updates with live speed. We are going to be in contact with persons attending the nationals, and this data is going to be super quick. So if you want to have updates on national championships, even though there is not a stream or something, definitely make sure to consider using the spreadsheet. You see, this is our overview tab, and we have cool overview pie charts as well. So far, 3 national championships have happened. One was taken down by Brandnet, one by Kashtira, and one by Live Twin Sprite, and therefore those are the 3 winning decks. And there's also an overall breakdown, and as you can see, by the looks of it, Kashtira, at least for the first 3 nationals, is still going to be our main contender in the meta game. Not too much innovation going on with that deck, let me tell you that, and therefore we are not going to look at too many Kashtira lists today. But I'm somewhat surprised by the amount of Melty Sprite decks still sticking around. It still seems like a very solid pick, and I did not expect it like that. I thought Pearly is going to be way more impactful right from the beginning. Super Heavy Samurai has performed quite well right now after the first 3 events, the third most represented deck in top cuts, and therefore performing way better than Pearly actually. And I think the numbers for Pearly and Super Heavy Samurai, they're going to go up even further now in the second week, because people were over-preparing for the new decks, and they kind of were under-preparing for Kashtira. And I think this is going to reverse a little bit now with all the data being available, seeing that Kashtira still is probably the best, or at least best performing deck in the meta game. People will probably go back to options versus that deck, and maybe drop a couple of options towards Pearly or Super Heavy Samurai. For Pearly, it's rough though, because options that are good versus Kashtira are very usually also good versus Pearly, at least talking about Kaijus and all that kind of stuff, Lava Golems and so on. But yeah, let's get into the action. Let's look at a couple of lists. Let's see what kind of decks were actually there in those top cuts. And first of all, we have a list from Portuguese Nationals, the first national championship of the season, and it is a Furniture Labyrinth deck which made top 16. And yeah, it seems like this is actually just taking over. I see more Furniture Labyrinth versions topping events than regular Labyrinth. Of course, in Ireland there was regular Labyrinth in the finals, but that was the only regular Labyrinth that topped over all those 3 events, and we had 2 Furniture Labyrinth decks topping in Ireland and here in Portugal. And therefore it seems like, even though it was super new, brand new at YCS London where it made top cut, this is the now maybe to be considered best version of Labyrinth. It is way more speedy, of course. It is somewhat almost like an FTK deck, I want to say, because you're turboing out like super unfair cards, and you're just trying to hinder your opponent from playing all together. And of course, cards like Ghost Match and Skill Drain will absolutely help you doing that. In the side deck, I like including Kelder and Mujora, because you will be able to discard those with, for example, Stovey Torbo, Torby, or Kuklok and all those kind of cards, and therefore you get them into the graveyard as interruptions for the matchups you might need them, be it Telements or something like that. But let's move on. As I said, I was really surprised by the amount of Melty Sprite plays, especially in Portugal, being successful. This is a list that also made top, I think in the end it made top 8. Our title is not completely accurate here. It made top 8, and as you can see, there is Ibli in the main deck, which is not super exciting or extraordinary, because the successful Melty Sprite deck lists out of YCS London also did that. For example, the one by Dinkan Pham did it too. and therefore I'm not too surprised by it. And all around, it's just, I mean, yeah, you can play a bunch of hand traps. You are now Putting in the Drolls, of course, because they're really good versus the new decks, especially Super Heavy Samurai. But besides that, this looks basically the way it looked before. I can tell you, this is just super solid. Still one of the most solid engines in the game, the Sprite engine, just snowballing off of every single card. And yeah, if you want to have a solid pick where you know what you're doing with your deck because it is already out for so long and the combos are very much known, then maybe consider just going with Sprite still, I gotta say it. It is still a very, very solid pick, but maybe you want to consider playing this super spicy Melty Sprite list that made top 8 as well in Portugal. And yes, this is Melty Sprite. But you might be wondering, where are the Melty cards in the extra deck? There is no synchros that you could put together with Penny. But yeah, there is no Penny either, Melty Pony, and that's why I'm calling this Melty Pony Sprite basically, is the only Melty card in the main deck. And this card basically guarantees you having infinite follow-up with Beaver, because it can always add back Beaver from the graveyard. And therefore, he values having follow-up more than having that extra interruption with the Penny and the Caddy. Interesting decision, I gotta say that. But Melty Sprite has been struggling with follow-up, and therefore I do somewhat understand it. And he was successful with it. Also, the Dark Beckoning Beast package, there's Capsule, and there's also Fallen of Agiros, a card freshly new out of Cyberstorm Access, belonging to the Sprite archetype, not having Sprite in its name though, which makes it significantly worse in my book. Still, he played it twice. His justification basically was, this is pretty good in a mirror because you can just detach materials from Gigantic from the opponent when he's summoning it and so on. And therefore, maybe the way to go if Sprite picks up even more popularity in the future. But next up, we have one of the new decks. We have the Super Heavy Samurai strategy, and this is the deck that made top 4 at the Nationals in Portugal. And yeah, this almost has more hand traps than Mathmech. It's crazy. Of course, you're going to play Droll. Of course, Ghost Ogre is now a lot more popular. Ghost Mourner actually is seeing a rise in popularity. First of all, because there's just more slots for hand traps, so you can throw in more. Second of all, Pearly players are going to play around Effect Veiler by summoning out their stuff in draw phase and activating their Pearlies in draw phase. Effect Veiler can't stop that, Ghost Mourner can. Therefore, Ghost Mourner in that, under those circumstances, just a little bit better. Regarding the Super Heavy Samurai main deck lineup, Soul Piercemaker usually is being played as a one-off. We see it as a two-off here. Something that's not super extraordinary though. I have seen 2 of those in main decks before. It's fine, it's alright. Something that actually is even more interesting to me is just Anti-Spell in the side deck. So he's like, hey, I'm setting up my combo board, I put Anti-Spell on top of it. There's just no way that I will need my 3rd turn as my follow-up turn. And therefore, if this card somehow ends up in the graveyard, I don't care. So this is a Super Heavy Samurai player making the bold call that you are actually able to play spell and trap cards in your side deck. And now, maybe one of the most innovative decks. I don't want to say the most innovative deck because there's some other stuff, crazy stuff happening, which I already had profiles of on my channel. For example, the Super Heavy Samurai Orcus deck that made the finals of the Israeli Nationals. But this is Pearly Sprite. I think talking about Pearly, most people were just considering the pure Pearly deck. But Pearly Sprite actually was first after Swiss in the Nationals in Ireland, and then got knocked out in top 8. But it's kind of nice because, of course, the extra deck monsters are all rank 2s, and therefore you are enabling your your Sprite cards with that. So there is a synergy between the Pearly engine and the Sprite engine, and I think this is just super toolboxy. I really like that. The only downside I personally have with this is that you're not going to have as much space for hand traps as you have in other builds. In pure Sprite or in Melty Sprite, you just have so many more slots for that, dedicated for that. And here it's, as you can see, 2 Droll, 3 Nibiru, 1 Called By and 3 Dark Ruler. Those are not hand traps, but those are also like flex spots. And this is basically it, which is just a lot less than other decks. Also kind of interesting, we are playing 1 double cross over starters and also over smashers. Not playing starter makes sense because you want to summon out Noir, which is not level or rank 2, of course. And but playing the double crossover smashers, of course, is somewhat interesting. But there is another list. This is Branded. Branded still going strong. We know it won a national even in Israel in the hands of Gelso TCG. But this is the list that made top 8 at the national in Portugal. And yeah, of course, here the most interesting stuff with the release of Cyberstorm Access are going to be the cards from that set. And as we can see, there's one Quem in the main deck. There is one Albion in the extra deck, and there's also Lulu Wabif in the extra deck as well. So we are playing the new cards, all of them as one-offs. Besides that, I think it's quite interesting that he decided to go up to 45 cards just to fit in more hand traps. There's triple Ash, there's triple Droll and Lockbird as well. But besides that, nothing too crazy. Santa Claus in here, back row Hate also in there, so he wants to be prepared for back row matchups. And will be interesting to see whether you are, because here we saw lately, and we also talked about that in Lampi Loves Meta already, that Nadir's Servant was a card that picked up in popularity a lot, but we see he's going back to the crossout designator stuff. No Nadir's Servants, but crossout designators in here. So maybe that is still the way to go, the original, the traditional way, just stopping Ash Blossom, therefore of course playing the card yourself. And then last but not least for this deck, of course, there is the Gimmick Puppet in the main deck. I still am not in love with that, but most of the lists that have been performing lately have been doing that. So having that auto win button game 1 if you are winning the die rolls seems to be quite good, and was here successful for the player, finishing in top 8 of the Portuguese National Championship. And now, the winner of the Irish National Championship was someone with Life Twin Sprite. And let me tell you that I did not see that coming. Life Twin Runic Sprite, before the release of Cyberstorm Access, was everywhere and was somewhat considered to be the best deck, maybe even. For example, Nico Schlierkamp winning the German Open with it. And also it's just all around performing pretty decently well. But now there's no Runic cards anymore, because the Runic cards are not that great versus Super Heavy Samurai and all the other new stuff. But just original Life Twin Sprite all of a sudden being the goo. Just a bunch of generic good cards, hand traps, talons, and then, yeah, he managed to go all the way. I'm pretty impressed by that, I have to say. I did not see that coming at all, seriously. I thought this is maybe one of the rogue contenders in the format, but definitely not a top contender. But here he is, putting it up, being a national champion. So maybe we should consider Life Twin Sprite as an option for the upcoming tournaments. Let me definitely know in the comments down below what you think about Life Twin Sprite in the current format. Is it really a contender? Is it a top contender? I'm not too sure about it all around, but that was the last list we are going to look at today. As I said, I'm going to put you the link to the spreadsheet down into the description as well. I will definitely continue this series. I will update as much as possible on social media about all the national championships happening this weekend. There is the Swiss National Championship on Saturday and Sunday, and then there's a Greek National Championship on Sunday. So definitely stay tuned for a bunch of information. Thank you so much for watching. Once more, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. It was a blast as always. Also, check out one of my daily streams over on Twitch. I'm so glad that I can present you so much information and content about Yu-Gi-Oh! Today, and just in general in the last couple of days. Appreciate being part of this community. See you very soon.